In this activity, we'll be encapsulating our logic within expressions in order to make our program easier to follow and more robust. So once you're ready, fire up Visual Studio Code and we'll get started. Once Visual Studio Code is loaded, open up the A10 activity file. So double-click and the activity file will load. Once the activity file loads, review the topic and program requirements. As with other activities, attempt to implement a solution on your own with the video paused. Once completed, resume the video and I will demonstrate my implementation as well as provide insights to the activity topic. Okay, as we can see, our topic on this activity is working with expressions. Our program requirements are to print out it's big if a variable is greater than 100, and it's small if a variable is less than or equal to 100. So the requirements aren't too bad. As we can see in our notes, we need to use a Boolean variable set to an expression that determines whether the value is greater than 100 or less than or equal to 100. We need to use a function to print out the messages, and we also need to use a match expression to determine which message to print. I'm going to start by copying in some of the notes into the main function. For the variable with the value that we're checking, I'm just going to call it value. I will set it to 100. Next, we need a Boolean variable set to an expression. So it doesn't say what type of expression that we can use. We can use if, we can use match. I'm actually going to use neither. I'm going to show you a shortcut we can do for the situation. So I'm going to create my variable. I'll name it is GT100. So is, and then GT will be short for greater than 100. And I'm going to set it to value greater than 100. So far in the activities, we've been very verbose about how it's being implemented with the if expressions. So if value is greater than 100, we would have true, and otherwise we would have false. Now, remember when we have an if statement, we have if something evaluates to true, then you go into this block. Otherwise, you go into this block. Well, since Rust uses expressions, we know that this itself is an expression. So value greater than 100, that's either going to be true or false because we're using it right here with the if expression. So we can just extract that out, and this will either be true or false, which will solve our goal of determining whether it's greater than 100. So we don't need to have this entire thing at all. And usually if you have something simple like this, where you're just checking a value, you can just pop it in straight like that, and it'll be either true or it'll be false. So we don't need this whole entire block of if-else expression. Next, we need to use a function to print the messages. So I'm going to create a new function called print message. Now it's going to need to accept some function parameters in order to determine which message to print. So I'm just going to name my parameter GT_100. That's just going to be a Boolean because down here we're checking is greater than 100, value greater than 100. That's going to be true or false. So we need to deal with a Boolean value. I'm not going to return anything since it's simply just printing out a message. And as also we can see with our notes, we need to use a match expression to determine which message to print. So now we need to use match. So we're going to match on the parameter, which is named GT100. And we know that's a Boolean. So the only options here are true and false. So when it's true, it's going to print out it's big. As we see up here in the requirements, it's going to either print it's big or it's small. So when the value is false, we're going to print out it's small. Lastly, we need to actually call the function. That way our message gets printed. So we'll call our function with our variable, and this should complete our program. Now that our program is complete, let's walk through it and see if we can figure out how it works before we actually run it. So here we have our value that we're going to be testing. We're going to use 100. Next, we have a variable named isGT100, which is short for is greater than 100. And it's being set to an expression, and that expression just determines whether or not a value is greater than 100. So if the value is greater than 100, this will be true. And if it's not greater than 100, then this will be false. In our case, the value is 100, and it's not greater than 100, so this is going to evaluate to false. So this false will then be populated into this variable here, which then gets passed into the print message function. We call print message with this value, which we know to be false in our particular program. The false then gets matched here, so we match on GT100, which is our variable, which we know is false. So is it true? Nope. Is it false? Yeah. We are going to print out it's small per the program requirements. Control then returns back to the main function. There's nothing left here. And so then the program is complete. So I'm going to run this program now to verify that it works as we expect it to work. I'm going to go to terminal, new terminal. We are on activity 10. So I'm going to run it with the binary as A10. As we can see, it printed out it's small. And our code has the value set to 100. The value is not greater than 100, so it prints out it's small. If we change this value to, let's say, 999, we should get a message of it's big. So I'll rerun it. And here we see it's big because 999 is greater than 100. This concludes the activities video on expressions. I'll see you in the next presentation.